This is Souliloqy Radio, the podcast that discusses philosophy, spirituality, consciousness, and paths to a positive lifestyle from a non-theistic perspective. So sit back and open your mind. All right, welcome to another episode of Souliloqy Radio. This is episode 8, and we are discussing a topic that I touched on last episode, episode 7, which was titled How to Be Happier. And in that podcast, I touched on this concept of achieving a level titled Supreme Okayness. And I want to get deeper into this particular concept because at its core, it has the power to calm the churning waters of our lives. I want everyone for a second to imagine a metronome. And if you don't know what that is, I'm sure you've seen it. It's the instrument that's used by musicians. It has a pendulum and it keeps the beat for a time signature of a song. You usually see it on top of a piano and it click-clacks back and forth. If you're still not familiar, I want you to imagine a pendulum on a grandfather clock that allows the clock to keep time. So the metronome keeps a perfect timed beat to aid musicians. As it goes back and forth with its tick-tock noise, it keeps the rhythm of the song. Now I want you to imagine one end of the pendulum swing is happiness in your life, while the other end is unhappiness. See, the majority of us are living in a life where we're trying to hold the pendulum swing in the happiness area and trying to push away and prevent the swing towards unhappiness. So instead of a rhythmic tick-tock time keeping beat, you end up with an offbeat chaos. And in that same exact fashion, the song of our lives end up offbeat, out of rhythm, chaotic. We go through constant emotional highs and lows, and our lives seem like a sea churning in a storm. And I use the analogy of a song because it's literal. You see, scientifically speaking, every atom, including every atom in your body, is vibrating. Everything in the known universe is vibrating. Every vibration has a frequency at which it vibrates, and this frequency results in a sound. I want to give you an example of some of these sounds that are out there. These sounds were recorded from the Voyager, and this is the sound right now of Uranus's rings. You hear that? Almost an eerie-like sound there. I want you to hear this next one. That is the sound of the earth. I want one more sound I want you to hear. This is the sound of Tibetan singing bowls used for meditation. They sound quite similar, don't they? It almost sounds like if these songs from the planets are made by some ambient music DJ, but it's not. And it's really eerie that these sounds are really close to what these Tibetan singing bowls sing like. But they're all vibrating. These bowls vibrate. The planets are vibrating. Every atom in the known universe is vibrating. So what does this all have to do with Supreme Okayness? See, when you learn acceptance and to be okay of everything that occurs in your life, you can finally let go of the grasp you have on the pendulum. You can stop trying to control it and control life. Because you see, trying to control something that's ever changing and we have no power over takes an enormous amount of energy. Energy that is ill spent because you will never win that battle. You will only be left with anxiety, dissatisfaction, and ultimately suffering and unhappiness. When you finally let go of trying to control life and accept it for what it is, you can use that energy to maneuver through life instead of trying to control it. When you finally release control and flow with life through the good and the bad, when you allow to do the job it was meant to do without you interfering with it, that's when the noise goes away. That's when all you're left is your song. For some of us, it'll be the first time we hear it. For others, it'll be the first time in a long time. So long that we've forgotten what that sound is even like. But like riding a bike, it comes back to us. This very thing happened to me, and some of you may know that I had an earlier podcast. With that podcast coming out at the same time with the recent change of political spectrum, see, I found myself becoming lost in that. And it's a funny thing about becoming lost. You really don't know how lost you are until you get a reminder of how far away from your center you've gone. And I was indeed lost to my true self. I was trying to control the pendulum of public opinion in a political spectrum. It took the universe putting a person in my path who came to me with a simple question in order to remember who I was. That was the catalyst for bringing me back to my center and back to my song. See, when I no longer allowed that outside noise to infiltrate me and my mental state, I was clear to hear only my song, my true self. Because I realized that control was not going to work, and instead decided to maneuver. See, this concept of maneuvering through life instead of controlling it always brings me to the thought of an old nursery rhyme. Row, row, row your boat. And the interpretation that I once saw from Prince Aya. And he broke it down like such. We all know the words. It's row, row, row your boat. See, you row your boat, not anyone else's. And no one is going to row your boat for you. You have to do that. Gently down the stream. Gently down the stream. Going with the flow of life, right? Not against the current, not wasting all your energy and never going anywhere. You go with the flow of life. Merrily, merrily, merrily. Because you're supposed to enjoy the moment you're in. Whether good or bad, you take it with the same attitude. And why is that? Because life is but a dream. See, I never understood how profound that simple nursery rhyme was until I heard his interpretation. So I want to leave you with that during this break. I want to leave you with that. And when we return, we're going to talk more about how to accept life with Supreme Okayness. You're listening to Souliloqy Radio. You can find this show on any major podcast provider or by simply visiting Souliloqy.com and finding your preferred provider link on the listener page. The website will also contain links to the YouTube channel along with Facebook and Instagram pages. Remember to subscribe and leave a review so you never miss an episode. Now, back to the show. All right, we're back. And in the first half of this show, we kind of talk about our song and how the entire universe has a song, all the planets, everything in it, even down to you, shows how interconnected you are into the universe, how divine yourself is, that everything that is made up in the universe, everything that is made up in the stars is made up inside you. And that's how come you are a divine individual. Now, in the second half, what we're going to be talking about is how do we achieve the Supreme Okayness you're telling me about? How do I get there? First thing we have to do, we have to acceptance. We have to accept that we do not know what is actually good or bad in the eventual big picture of things. In the long term, something that seemed bad in the moment may turn out to be a blessing in disguise. How many times have we heard that? See, there's a story I'm going to tell you right now about a farmer and a horse. And the story goes, there was this farmer, and one day this beautiful horse ends up going into his ranch. His neighbor comes over and he tells him, he's like, wow, what a beautiful workhorse you have there. You know, you're very fortunate. Farmer looks at him and says, who knows what is good and what is bad? And goes about his day. Well, the next day the horse runs away. Neighbor comes by again and tells him, wow, you lost such a prized horse. You know, how unfortunate. Farmer looks at him and says, who knows what is good and what is bad? Keeps going about his work. The very next day after that, the horse returns with 4 mares. Neighbor comes over once again and says, wow, now you've got 5 horses. That's fantastic. How fortunate. Again, farmer replies to him and says, who knows what is good and what is bad? Goes about his day. The next day, the farmer's son was trying to train and break in one of the horses and ended up falling off and breaking his leg. His neighbor comes over and he tells him, wow, your son broke his leg, and, you know, now you're out of help for the farm, and, you know, how unfortunate. How are you going to get by? And the farmer tells him, who knows what is good and what is bad? Goes about his day. The very next day, as the farmer's son is laid up with a bad leg, the army comes through, conscripting and drafting able-bodied young men for the war. In that process, they end up taking the neighbor's son, but the farmer's son, due to the broken leg, didn't go. The neighbor comes over and says, oh wow, the army didn't take your son, and stopped. And he just thought to himself, who knows what is good and what is bad? See, the moral of the story is that we never know in the long run what the end game of these events that happen, whether they will be good or whether they will be bad. We can't get caught up in that immediate moment of what something is. We just have to accept these moments in life as they come, right? And that's not to say that the farmer, at the time that the horse showed up, wasn't excited when he first saw the horse arrive, like, cool, a new horse. Or when his son broke his leg, that he wasn't worried in that moment about how he would, you know, tend the fields. He just didn't allow those moments to control the rest of his thoughts. Instead of dwelling, he maneuvered. So by the time the neighbor came, he was like, you know, who knows what is good and what is bad? See, in that same manner, we have to accept each moment as it is. Just life. Like a box of chocolates, right? We've all heard that. You never know what you're going to get, because you actually never know what you are going to get. See, and just because you get a flavor you don't like, you don't throw away the box. You don't throw them all out. You may take that one piece out your mouth and you just move on to the next piece. See, we get this attitude about life, right? That it's like a game, and we need to abandon that for the most part, because the game that we refer to is what? chess. People are like, oh, life is a game of chess. Life is a game of chess.